PSG and Inter Milan reaching the Champions League final seriously runs the risk of hot takes dominating the discourse around the state of the modern game, and the one that perhaps interests me the most is the fact that both these teams are ardent advocates and perhaps notable benefactors of the weak link theory. For those of you who aren't nearly as boring as I am and don't know what that is, it's a concept which is often known as the O-ring theory in analytics circles, which stipulates that football teams are only as good as the weakest player in their team. While some sports such as basketball are often dictated by the best player in each team, when it comes to football, it often comes down to the worst player on the pitch, not the best one. Theory seems to have come from a 2002 article in The New Yorker by Malcolm Gladwell titled The Talent Myth, in which the celebrated author essentially pulls apart huge corporations like Enron for prioritising star employees over the average Joe, which then leads to a company that gives too much autonomy to individuals at the expense of proper organisational structure or teamwork. And it's not hard to see how that would apply to football, or indeed the two finalists of this season's Champions League. For example, while PSG undoubtedly have star players and a wage bill that will blow just about any other European team out of the water, their ascension to the Champions League final will inevitably be portrayed through the lens of the club achieving such a feat without Kylian Mbappé. And while it might be too simplistic to say that PSG have reached a new level of European football after throwing off the shackles of star players like Mbappé, but also Messi and Neymar too, it's a narrative that I find far too enticing to ignore. When we consider PSG's success in the Champions League over the last 10 years, and overlay it with Mbappe's time at the club, we get a graph like this one. The club certainly had some highs with the French striker, such as a final in 2020 and the two runs to the semi-finals in 2021 and 2024. But rather remarkably, the League One Giants were knocked out of the competition at the last 16 stage in 4 of Mbappe's 7 seasons at the club. And in many of those doomed campaigns, the French side were utterly devoid of cohesion and balance within their team, instead attempting to cram as many stars into the front line as possible. The perfect example of the weak link theory in football. In my defence, my interest in this theory goes well beyond Kylian Mbappe's struggles at PSG in the Champions League, and actually goes back to Erling Haaland's time at Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. In a truly rare example, at least by modern standards, of a world-class player plying his trade not at a super club, Haaland's incredible goal haul should have elevated Dortmund to new heights both domestically and in European football. But that's not really what happened. When we plot Dortmund's points per game and goals scored per game in the Bundesliga over the course of the last 10 seasons, we get a graph like this one. The time Haaland spent at the club is marked by the blue area, and as we can see, it wasn't exactly a golden era of dominance for the Westphalian club. Dortmund certainly scored a lot of goals, particularly in Haaland's second full season at the club, but the club's points per game hardly budged at all. In fact, if you focus entirely on the black line here, you could argue that Dortmund actually plateaued in the league despite having the most sought-after goal scorer in the world firing goals each and every week. Such a malaise in spite of the world-class talent was also evident in the Champions League. Although the club reached the quarter-finals in 2021, Haaland's final season at Dortmund saw them bow out of the competition at the group stages, finishing third behind Ajax and Sporting. Then, in almost a repeat of PSG's fortunes when they moved on from Mbappé, Dortmund suddenly found themselves in the Champions League final 2 years later thanks to Edin Terzic's dogged and hard-working side. Despite Haaland's best attempts and his dozens and dozens of goals for Dortmund, he didn't move the needle at all for the club's fortunes both domestically and in Europe. Similarly, when we then look at Haaland's time at Man City, we can see a similar trend playing out despite the goal scorer's remarkable record in front of goal. Despite his superhuman goal scoring in his first 2 seasons at Man City, the club's goals per game and points per game actually dropped from the 21-22 campaign. And even though the striker has bagged an incredible 24 goals and assists in 29 league games this season, Pep Guardiola's side have dropped off dramatically in the English top flight. Of course, a fair rebuttal to all this would simply be the 2 league titles and the all-important Champions League that Haaland has won since he made the move to England. But in those instances, he was part of a remarkably talented and well-balanced Manchester City team. So much so that they achieved that Champions League triumph despite the fact that he didn't score in either the semi-final ties against Real Madrid or the final against Inter Milan. In this regard, somewhat ironically, he was perhaps the weak link in that star-studded team. But this time around, in Guardiola's team this season, his goals and assists can compensate for the lack of world-class players in a number of positions. This naturally brings us back to the Champions League finalists. No team, I think, perhaps exemplifies the pursuit of making as few errors as possible the Simone Inzaghi's Inter Milan side. Inter Milan didn't win this tie against Barcelona because they were able to stop Barcelona's strongest link, which of course is Lamine Yamal, but because Hansi Flick's tactics exposed their own weakest link, which was the somewhat inexperienced Pau Cubarsí, who gave away a penalty and helped Inter Milan score 2 counter-attacking goals. What's so fascinating about this series is that it not only underlines the folly of overlooking second-string fullbacks or ageing midfielders in favour of signing more star wingers and strikers, but it also underlines why Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo were so special when they were in their prime. Unlike Mbappé, Haaland or Yamal, Messi and Ronaldo did seemingly have the capacity to win games almost single-handedly, and as a result overcame the inherent flaws in their teams. Perhaps it takes a true great to overcome the economic and sporting laws that secretly govern the beautiful game. And if so, that feels like a fitting test for these young stars of today to overcome if they really want to be compared to the likes of Messi and Ronaldo in the years to come. But for now, European football might have to bunker down for a period without these kind of individuals that can rewrite the rulebook at will. This season's Champions League may end up being a somewhat dull affair, but the manner in which PSG and Inter Milan reached it is undoubtedly fascinating.